So, Sophie, I want to start today with a moment that a very specific group of advanced learners has lived through repeatedly, and they have no idea why it keeps happening.
Okay, walk us in.
You are talking to a colleague in English, not about anything intense, just describing your morning or explaining a project or answering a question about your weekend. Your tone feels perfectly normal to you. Your English is good, your grammar is fine. You are just talking. And in the middle of what you thought was a completely neutral conversation, the other person tilts their head, looks at you carefully, and says, "Hey, is everything okay?" Or, "You sound a bit off today. Is something wrong?" Or, "Did I do something?"
And you are baffled because from the inside, you were just talking. You were not upset, you were not angry, you were not bored, you were just describing your morning. And yet the person across from you thought you were sending some emotional signal you had no idea you were sending.
And here is what almost no advanced English resource explains. Different languages use different melodic patterns to signal that a sentence is neutral, friendly, interested, engaged. In many of the world's languages, that neutral pattern is essentially flat. The pitch stays in a narrow range, rises very little, falls very little, and the sentence ends at roughly the same pitch it started.
And in English, flat is not neutral. Flat is a signal, specifically a signal of one of three things: boredom, anger, or emotional withdrawal. So when an advanced learner uses their native flat intonation while speaking English, native speakers read it as one of those three states every single time.
And this is why so many advanced learners get asked, "Are you okay?" throughout their professional lives, without ever knowing why. Their English is fluent, their grammar is right, their vocabulary is solid, but the melody of their sentences is imported directly from their native language. And that melody, in English, sounds like something is wrong.
And today we are going to expose this completely. We are going to walk through the intonation gap concept. We are going to explain the three specific melodic patterns that English actually uses for normal conversation. And we're going to give you a melody transplant practice that shifts your English intonation into the native range without changing anything else about your speech.
Welcome to Side by Side English Podcasts. I'm Mark.
I'm Sophie. Today is for the advanced learner who has been told at some point that they sound angry or bored when they were just talking normally in English, who has been baffled by the reaction, who has assumed something was wrong with the listener. We are going to show you today that the melody, not the words, has been the problem all along.
Stay with us. We have the intonation gap explained, the three English melodic patterns for real conversation, the melody transplant practice, a role play showing the flat speaker versus the melodic speaker on the same content, and a word tour with 6 brand new B2 to C1 words.
Quick comment question before we begin. Have people ever asked you, "Are you okay?" when you were just talking normally in English? Drop a yes or no and tell us your native language.
Okay, let's hear the melody. So, Sophie, let's start with the science. What is intonation and why does it differ so dramatically between languages?
Intonation is the melodic pattern of a spoken language, the rise and fall of pitch across a sentence. And every language on Earth has its own melodic signature, its own default patterns, its own rules for what different melodies mean.
In some languages, like many Slavic, Turkic, and East Asian languages, use fairly flat intonation for neutral statements. The pitch stays in a narrow range, rises very little, falls very little, and the sentence ends at roughly the same pitch it started.
In English, though, that flat melody signals something completely different. English uses a much wider melodic range for normal conversation. Regular English intonation dances. It rises, it falls, it bounces. It varies pitch dramatically across a single sentence. And this variation is what English listeners interpret as engagement, warmth, interest.
And so when the melody is flat, English listeners do not hear neutrality. They hear withdrawal. They hear something missing, and their brain quickly categorizes that missing melody as boredom, anger, or emotional distance without any conscious analysis.
And here's what makes this so tricky for learners. Nobody teaches this. Grammar books don't cover it, vocabulary lists don't include it. Even most pronunciation courses focus on individual sounds, not on melodic patterns, so learners can become genuinely fluent at C1 or C2 level and still speak English with the melody of their native language. Because the melody is invisible, it gets absorbed early and never gets flagged for correction.
And native speakers receiving that melody can't even name what feels off. They just feel it. You sound tired. You sound annoyed with me. None of those things are actually true, but the melody is telling them so in a language deeper than words.
Let's actually walk through the 3 specific melodic patterns that English uses for normal conversation, because if learners can hear these patterns clearly, they can start to reproduce them.
Yes, 3 patterns. Pattern 1, the rising falling arc.
This is the most common English pattern for simple statements. The pitch rises through the first part of the sentence, peaks around the middle, and falls at the end. Not sharply, gently, like a small hill. I went to the store this morning. The pitch lifts on went to the store. It comes down softly on this morning.
And this arc communicates engagement. It says, I'm here, I'm present, I'm telling you something because I want you to hear it. Without this arc, the same sentence sounds like a robot reading a report.
Pattern 2, the lift on the important word.
English uses pitch to highlight the most important word in a sentence, and that word gets a small lift, a tiny musical spike. I want the blue one. The word blue gets the lift. I need to finish this today. The word today gets the lift.
And this lift communicates specificity. It says, notice this word. This is the piece that matters. Without the lift, all words sound equally important, which sounds like the speaker doesn't know what they're trying to communicate, which reads as tired or confused or disengaged.
And pattern 3, the question tail rise.
This is the pattern most learners have heard about. Yes/no questions in English end with a rise in pitch. Are you coming tonight? The word tonight goes up. Did you get the email? The word email goes up.
But here's what learners often miss. Even statements can carry a small question tail rise when the speaker wants to sound warm, inviting, or open. So we're going with the plan. Said with a gentle rise on plan, this sounds like a friendly confirmation. Said flat, it sounds like a directive.
3 patterns: rising falling arc, lift on the important word, question tail rise. Together, they form the melodic vocabulary of native English conversation, and they're the specific melodies that flat intonation learners are usually missing.
Which brings us to the melody transplant, the practice that swaps your native melody for English melody without changing anything else about your speech.
Yes, let's walk through it, because this is one of the most transformative practices in advanced English, and almost nobody teaches it.
The melodic transplant has 3 simple steps.
Step 1, pick a short native audio sample.
Find a piece of native English audio, 30 to 60 seconds long, not too dramatic, just normal conversational English.
A podcast segment, a YouTube clip of 2 people talking, a short interview, something with clear, warm, everyday intonation.
Step 2, trace the melody, not the words.
Listen to the sample 5 or 6 times, and each time deliberately trace the pitch pattern of the speakers with your hand. Move your hands up when the pitch rises, down when it falls. Small dips, small lifts.
Do not focus on what the speaker is saying. Focus only on the melody they are singing while they say it.
And what happens is your ear starts to hear the intonation as a separate layer from the words, which is the first step in reproducing it, because you cannot reproduce what you cannot hear.
Step 3. Speak your own English content with the same melody.
Now, immediately after tracing the sample, speak 30 seconds of your own English on any topic, but deliberately try to reproduce the melodic pattern you just traced. Not the words, not the speed, just the shape of the melody, the rises, the falls, the peaks, the dips.
And the first time you do this, it feels theatrical, almost fake, because your natural melody, the one imported from your native language, is being overwritten by a completely different melodic pattern, and the override feels strange in your mouth.
But keep going. Do it daily, 5 to 10 minutes, and within a few weeks, the English melody starts to feel less foreign, less theatrical, more natural, because your brain has begun to accept it as a legitimate way to speak English, and your speech starts to shift.
And the real payoff arrives when one day a colleague notices that you seem warmer, more engaged, more friendly, without you changing anything about your vocabulary, grammar, or content. just the melody, and suddenly the "are you okay" moments stop happening because the melody is finally telling the truth about how you actually feel, instead of accidentally lying with an imported pattern.
Okay, let's do a role play. Sophie, set the scene.
All set it. Same speaker, same content. First with flat native intonation imported from their native language, then with English melody transplanted in so the audience can hear the difference clearly even in an audio-only format.
Okay, the situation is simple. A colleague asks, "How was your weekend?"
Version 1, flat native intonation, delivered without any rises or falls.
"It was good. I went to see my sister. We had dinner. Then I came home. That was it."
And listen to that. Every word delivered at the same pitch, every sentence ending at the same tone. No lifts, no dips, no highlighting of important words.
In many native languages, this delivery would be completely normal, warm even. But in English, this delivery signals boredom or displeasure. The colleague hearing this might tilt their head and ask, "Everything okay?"
Now, version 2. Same words, same content, but with English melody.
"It was good. I went to see my sister. We had dinner. Then I came home. That was it."
And listen to the transformation. Same as 6 sentences, same information, but now the pitch rises on good, lifts on sister, bounces on dinner, softens on home, and that gentle question tail rise on "that was it" invites the colleague into the conversation.
And the colleague hearing version 2 receives an entirely different message. They hear warmth, they hear friendliness, they hear a person who is present and happy to be talking, even though the words did not change, only the melody.
Same speaker, same words, 2 dramatically different perceived emotional states, created entirely by intonation, which is the invisible layer that most advanced learners never work on, and that costs them warmth in every English conversation for their entire career.
Word tour?
Word tour.
First word, intonation. Intonation is the melody of speech, the pattern of pitch that rises and falls across a sentence. It is one of the most important components of spoken language and one of the least taught.
For example, English intonation carries as much meaning as English vocabulary, and mastering intonation is often what separates fluent-sounding speakers from truly warm ones. Repeat, intonation.
Intonation. Next, monotone. Monotone means speaking at a single, unchanging pitch. It is the specific word English speakers use to describe flat delivery, and it's what native ears perceive when a learner uses flat native language melody in English.
For example, a monotone delivery in English almost always reads as boredom or disengagement, even when the speaker feels neither. Repeat, monotone.
Monotone. Next, melodic. Melodic means having a pleasant, musical, up and down quality. English speech, at its most natural, is genuinely melodic, and reclaiming your English melody is one of the fastest ways to sound warmer and more native.
For example, natural English is more melodic than most learners realize, and adding melody back into your speech can transform how listeners feel around you. Repeat, melodic.
Melodic. Next, to trace. In today's context, to trace means to follow the shape of something carefully. When you trace the melody of a native speaker with your hand, you're literally mapping their pitch pattern in space, which is one of the most effective ways to internalize it.
For example, tracing the melody of native speakers with your hand while you listen is a simple but powerful way to teach your brain the shape of English intonation. Repeat, trace.
Trace. Next, to perceive. Perceive means to become aware of something through the senses, especially in a way that involves interpretation. Native speakers perceive flat intonation as anger or boredom, even when no anger or boredom is present, because perception is not just about what's there, but about how our brains interpret what's there.
For example, native speakers perceive intonation instantly and unconsciously, which means your English melody shapes how you're perceived whether you know it or not. Repeat, perceive.
Perceive. And finally, warmth. Warmth is the quality of being friendly, kind, and emotionally present. It's one of the most important qualities in interpersonal communication, and it's one of the qualities most often missing from flat intonation English speech.
For example, warmth in English is carried largely by intonation, which is why even the most correct grammar can feel cold without the right melody. Repeat, warmth.
Warmth. 6 words today: Intonation, monotone, melodic, trace, perceive, and warmth. Every one of them is a real, useful, modern English word that captures something specific about how spoken language actually communicates.
Sophie, one final takeaway.
That the reason people have been asking, "Are you okay?" when you were just talking normally, has nothing to do with what you were saying. It has to do with the melody your sentences were carrying, a melody imported from your native language, where it meant neutrality. But in English, that same melody means something else entirely: boredom, anger, withdrawal. And listeners have been reacting to that imported melody without ever telling you what was happening.
And the fix is not to change your personality, not to force a fake warmth, just to transplant the English melody into your English speech, deliberately, with daily practice, until the melody starts to feel natural, and your voice finally tells the truth about how you actually feel, instead of accidentally lying with an imported pattern.
Small challenge before we go. For the next 7 days, do the melody transplant practice once a day. 5 minutes. Find a short piece of natural English audio, trace the melody with your hands while listening, then speak 30 seconds of your own English, deliberately trying to match the melodic shape you just traced.
And notice what happens. Notice how theatrical it feels at first. Notice how after a few days, the English melody starts to feel less strange. Notice if anyone around you says something like, "You seem in a good mood today," because that's often the first sign that the melody is starting to land.
Drop a comment after the week. Tell us your native language. Tell us if the intonation gap felt as big as we described. Tell us if any moment shifted. We want to hear the results.
Because the moment a learner realizes that the melody, not the vocabulary, has been the missing piece all along, the entire trajectory of their English speech changes. Warmth returns, colleagues respond differently, and the "Are you okay?" question finally stops arriving.
I'm Sophie.
I'm Mark. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being willing to work on the invisible layer of English that almost nobody teaches.
Trace the melody, speak the music. We'll see you in the next one.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.